Well, hello, everybody. This is the first webcast between Inixiate and 5Echo as a collaboration to bring amazing academic but practical knowledge to the business world. We're going to introduce one of the professors that is in Inixiate's stable. So Joanne, would you like to introduce how you met Milo Jones and why is he here with us today?
Milo is one of the professors that we have within the organization, and I met Milo through a common contact from his teaching with IE Business School, and we decided that the topics that he's teaching with the business schools as well to the industry fits very well to Asia, and the topics that he's teaching is not right now. So we find that it's very valuable to what we need. I would like to perhaps let you introduce what Milo is teaching, and we can continue.
Great. Right. Well, Milo is not only a professor, but he's a practitioner and an industry expert in geopolitics, cybersecurity, and intelligence analysis. He holds positions in the IE Business School and CEDEP and teaches advanced non-market strategy courses, including intelligence tools for finance professionals and a variety of geopolitics related courses. Now, Milo has worked with a variety of big companies, including Exeter and Accenture, Santander, BHP Billiton, Gulf Medical, Kimberly-Clark, Nikkei, Nissan, Westpac, Walmart, my goodness, the list goes on. So you're quite the practitioner, and we would really love to hear from you, Milo. What is it that grew your passion to look at and explore artificial intelligence and leadership?
Gosh, that's a big question. But first I want to say thank you, Joanne, my partner at Inixiate, and thank you, Yvonne and Mark, because I am committed in 2018 and 2019 to spend more time in Singapore and KL, because those are dynamic regions. And in fact, we have an event in Singapore on the 16th of July. For those who are in town and want to hear more about artificial intelligence and leadership, please do come. My specialty, my PhD, is actually on intelligence, but not artificial intelligence. It's on the CIA and the internal culture and identity of the CIA and strategic surprise. Now, the first layer of why I'm interested in artificial intelligence and leadership is between that background plus my time in the Marine Corps. There's sort of an intersection between big changes happening and it's changing leadership. So that's the first layer. But the second layer of why I'm interested in artificial intelligence and leadership actually flows from consulting work I've done, where on a couple of occasions I've talked to companies and boards will be discussing an investment in robotics, and there's usually the normal questions you'd expect. Well, what's the return on investment, and what's the implementation schedule, and all those businessy type questions. But then at some point, leadership questions start bubbling to the top. Questions ranging from, well, tell me about the workers who are going to be replaced. Do we have positions for them, or are they seeking other career opportunities, so to speak? And I have watched and seen the discomfort with those questions, plus people looking at what these changes mean, artificial intelligence and automation, what they mean to their organization. And I realized that leaders are not probably ready for the changes we see are coming. So I've really spent the last 3 or 4 years thinking more and more about not just geopolitics and intelligence and the impact of AI, but the impact on the moving parts of the business world, leaders and the organizations they're in. And so that's how I moved from what seems like an unrelated sphere into an interest in leadership, artificial intelligence, and automation.
That's quite fascinating because Mark and I also work in leadership, and one of the clear trends is people are fearing the inevitable coming of AI, machine learning, and the threat to jobs, and something around in 2040, 40% of our jobs will be replaced by AI. And I guess one of the things I would love to hear from you is, and this is something that we're seeing, is what is it that you see the leaders need to do, maybe with their people, to be able to help them, I guess, get over this mindset, almost like a mindset makeover. What is this transformation that they themselves need to do in their minds to not fear this inevitable coming of this new age?
Okay. I think the main reason people are scared is because they've seen a lot of movies. And the fact is, ever since Mary Shelley wrote Frankenstein, not to mention what Arnold Schwarzenegger got up to, we pretty much know how the movie ends, right? Sooner or later, machines that are intelligent go crazy and kill people. And leaders think, well, gosh, maybe it means I'm first. So you have to recognize there's some real cultural baggage that makes people think as machines get more and more human-like, sooner or later, that's a bad thing. On the other hand, they're right to be interested and concerned because we are living in a time of enormous change in AI and automation, and this will have profound business impact. There is not a sector that won't be touched. So their impulse to be interested and concerned is right, but their impulse to be scared is wrong. But you said, all right, what is, as a practical matter, what should they be doing to get their teams ready? And here, if you'll permit me, I'm going to be a little abstract. I believe the best metaphor for what AI will be able to do in the near future is the relationship that early humans had, frankly, with hunting dogs. Now, we decided 50,000 years ago that, gosh, dogs hear better than we do and they smell better than we do. And maybe we can form a partnership between one species and the other. It's called symbiosis in biology. And both species benefit. And I want leaders to think about, it's like the AI they'll be getting in their organizations is like a hunting band getting hunting dogs, that they will work in symbiosis with some things that do certain tasks a lot better than any human. But the same way that hunting dogs can't always explain themselves, algorithms can't always explain why they think you should do X or Y. Just do it, and you got to learn to trust the algorithm. And that's a big leap, just as it would have been for early humans trusting the hunting dogs they're working with. Similarly, as I say, there'll be times when people trust the dog too much. And finally, there needs to be a human touch. And you can't just say, okay, he's a hunting dog, do whatever he says. People will go from one extreme to the other. So I guess as the most practical thing to get their teams ready, it's they themselves and their team should be thinking about, how do we strike the balance between embracing the possibilities, but monitoring, checking, and thinking through the recommendations this new species we're working with is recommending, if that makes sense. I don't know, maybe we're now all lost in metaphors and people thought, gosh, I didn't know this was an evolutionary biology podcast. I thought this was a practical business AI podcast. But tell me if I need to re-explain.
Hey, Milo, I was even going to take it one notch, which is saying that often, when humanity, even embracing just even technology where we use, say, the conveyor belt to do manufacturing so that it made us more effective and efficient, that we are allowing ourselves to be freed up to do things that either we like better or that we can be more human with. So what I'm hearing, that most people are going to the fear section thinking, what am I losing, as opposed to what am I gaining when I can actually introduce AI so that I can become more human. For instance, we can be more spiritual, which I guess AI hasn't learned how to do that yet. So, you know, that kind of stuff. But we probably
not yet, but there is, if you feel the need, there is a confessional chat bot available that will sign you patents if you chat with it. And this is one of the interesting things about the impact of AI on organizations. Many hospitals, for example, have found that people say, I don't want an artificial intelligence doctor. But then they find out, well, gosh, artificial intelligence is reading x-rays for cancer better than a human radiologist, so maybe I do. But more interestingly, they have found that men, for example, are far more comfortable answering a questionnaire and answering questions from a machine about their health history than they are sitting down and chatting with a human doctor, and quite frankly, particularly a female human doctor. For reasons I can't imagine, some men are just happier talking to the robot, so to speak. So we as a society, as we get robots that can sort of do the initial questioning to men about their health, we are going to see some very interesting changes and shifts in emphasis in organizations and society as a whole. And the one thing leaders have to do is don't be scared, and you cannot say, stop the world, I want to get off. As leaders, your first responsibility is to face what is going on squarely. And what is going on is a huge and rapid set of advances in artificial intelligence and automation, touching almost every sector I can think of. Maybe piano movers are safe. If there are any piano movers listening, I don't think robotics will be after your job anytime soon. It's too specialized and complex and quite physical. Otherwise, you should be thinking about it.
Okay. Well, Milo, let's turn towards the other stakeholder, which is the staff and the employee. How does the leader alleviate their fears? Because obviously they may not even be speaking about it, but they're thinking, well, the more management is spending on this machine learning, I'm going to lose my job, and I've been told I'm a bit robotic as a manager. Will my job be taken over? You know, so jokes aside, you know, how would a leader approach that part of the deal?
It's a delicate balance, because on the one hand, you don't want to ignore the problem. You have to talk about it, but as soon as you start talking about it, that can lead to big questions to which you probably won't have answers. Like, will I have a job in 5 years? Well, whether before AI was ever discussed, that was a difficult question for a manager to answer. You know, capitalism works that way. So it is a bit of a can of worms. The thing I genuinely believe, however, in fact, I don't just believe it, I know it. AI works best with people, alongside people, and people who are members of your staff who are good at sort of asking questions and interrogating systems and not just following orders have nothing to fear. And that's what I would say to them, that probably they need to improve or hone their ability to ask good questions, because we are not going to have good question asking artificial intelligence anytime soon. What we will have is systems that answer questions very well and very quickly. So if you have employees whose skill set is about just answering questions, well, then they do have to work to improve their ability to ask rather than answer questions. I mean, part of the problem is we all were told we were smart because of school systems were built for the industrial age. You're sorted by date of manufacture at about age 6, and someone comes in the room and asks you questions. And if you give the right answer, you're a smart person. And then the next year, someone else comes in the room and they ask you questions, and if you give the right answer, you're a smart person. We have educated millions of people around the world to think that the definition of smart and responsible and good as a worker is when somebody asks, I answer. Well, sorry, Alexa. Sorry, Siri. They answer questions better than you do, quite conceivably. And therefore, managers should say to workers, get good at the question asking, not the answer fetching end of your job.
Wonderful. So in a way, there's some development opportunities, certainly to prepare your team and your employees with this in mind, which is a way of being able to alleviate their fears. So thank you for that. Now, I'm just alerting everybody that please feel free to send in a chat question if you need to. We'll try to address as many questions as we can. We've only got probably 10 minutes left. If we don't get all those questions answered, we'll certainly save them and probably see whether, you know, the professor can answer them at the workshop in Singapore on July 17th. So if you're in Singapore, please feel free to get there. But otherwise,
16th, I'm afraid.
July 16th.
Oh, sorry. I beg your pardon. I'm living in another time zone. Must be Australian, you know. Okay, July 16th. I beg your pardon. So scratch that. Be in Singapore July 16th, and certainly contact Joanne at Inixiate to get that. And if you're not going to be attending, we'll try and see whether we can answer the questions at some point. But I've got a question that's come through in the chat room, and it says that following on from what you're talking about, you know, skilling yourself up, talk a bit more about these jobs of the future that we need to, you know, be prepared for. So besides questioning well, what other skills may we need in the workforce to counterbalance AI?
Individual workers, and we all, of course, aspire to be a leader, but the reality is not every organization can be 100% leaders all the time, certainly in a formal sense. I think besides improving their general ability to ask questions, good questions, and to recognize good questions, there's another skill, and it actually comes from the world of intelligence analysis, at least partly, and that is the ability to do what I would call interrogate anomalies. Where you notice something doesn't seem quite right, the individual employee who notices something, maybe not quite right, but just something exceptional. In a world of big data, with AI trying to make sense of things, it will be up to that individual employee to recognize when something is unique, when something is a true one-off, where something would never have prepared the people who wrote the algorithm, or the algorithm, however it's created, to respond to this situation appropriately. And, you know, for example, until very recently, if you said, Siri, you know, this podcast is just not going well. I feel like I want to throw myself off a bridge. Siri would answer, the nearest bridge is 1 kilometer.
Right.
And
thanks, Siri.
AI is going to frequently give dumb answers. And part of the skill set that every member of an organization should acquire is the ability to anticipate, or at least spot, as Apple's lawyers did. Siri apparently now gives very different advice. To spot such situations and prevent problems. That's on the level of the individual employee. Leaders, I think, also have to get good at a very different skill, which is storytelling, believe it or not.
Right.
People need meaning and purpose. Yes, we work for money, but they also want to feel like they're making a difference. And if you want to rise in an organization, the ability of leaders to spot those, I hate this expression, but I will use it, to spot those teaching moments and to say, gosh, let me tell you about this person 4 levels below me who saw a problem and acted on it. And that is great for that person, but that's also who we want to be as an organization. The ability to tell coherent stories and bring fairness, a sense of ownership, and a human touch to the organization as a whole will be increasingly important. And by the way, ladies, if you're listening, yes, in that sense, the future of leadership is probably a bit more, if we're going to deal in gender stereotypes, a bit more feminine than the traditional male, get it done, I said get it done, and deliver on schedule, etc. That those sorts of leadership behaviors perhaps might be less valued because the AI and the automation will get it done. That's not the issue. The issue is making sure the human workforce understands what this is about. Why are we here and what are we really trying to achieve?
Yes, yeah. Great.
So the future of leadership is perhaps feminine, you might say, in a world of AI and automation.
Isn't that amazing that it takes that big change in the world for us to be able to almost change our style of leadership, which is more a feminine style, like you said, is more community-based, more collaborative, and at some level being able to involve people at the more, like I said, human level. Now, a question has just come in from one of our people on the call. Milo, how does one employ AI in a startup farming industry? That's the question that's coming.
That's an interesting question. I'm not an expert in startup farming, but here's what I know. What is happening in several instances is automation is being used combined with big data to enable things like precision agriculture. So I know Google invested an enormous amount of money in a data startup that had very precise maps. It would send up a drone, look at fields, measure through different types of cameras the exact chemical composition and relative humidity of the soil and so on. And for every square meter of a farming plot. And then it had computer and robot controlled and GPS enabled combines that were planting the seeds at exactly the right depth and exactly the right spacing. And they saw, frankly, about a 15% increase in yield using the same original seeds and the same amount of water to water the fields, just on the basis of a sort of big data meets automation to optimize the planting of these seeds. Now, that is one of thousands of startups that are addressing AI meets automation meets big data meets farming, because, of course, as we know, in the next 20 years, 2 billion extra humans are going to show up on the planet. We'll move from about 8-ish billion to 10-ish billion, and they're all going to want to eat and drink. How selfish of them. They're all going to want energy, and I genuinely believe a lot of the technologies that scare people, of which AI and automation is one of them, a lot of them also will simply be necessary. So don't get scared, get rich. Embrace the technologies, think about them, and make it happen. And people in Asia, Singapore and KL, and everywhere else in Asia are really, in that sense, on the cutting edge, because you're on the cutting edge of the human change, political evolution, possibly, and also the technology evolution. So it's an exciting place to be. And maybe people in other parts of the world can put their head in the sand, but not in Asia, not now, not with these sorts of challenges. Very long answer, forgive me.
Well, I hope that answers your question, and it certainly has started the conversation on what can we individuals, trying to be a founder of a startup, start thinking about farming and AI, which is a great question. Now, we have about 3 minutes left in this call. It's gone so quickly. You've given us so much to think about, Milo. Is there any tips, that you think is worth looking at, that people need to consider moving forward with, AI being employed not only in, big organizations, but perhaps in the startup or being employed with communities? Any tips that people are venturing into that as a business? What tips have you got for them?
Let me give an unconventional one. There is an organization, anything that can be quantified, put into numbers, is likely to be susceptible to AI taking it over. So the key is to somehow look for and find things that only humans can do. And those are probably more synthesis than analysis, and they're questions that can't be expressed in numbers, quantified. Where do you go to find frameworks like that? And I have an unconventional answer that comes from my past, right? Every theory is a fragment of autobiography. Believe it or not, the intelligence community offers a lot of frameworks for thinking through problems that you just can't assign a number to. And in fact, I recently recorded a MOOC for Coursera called Intelligence Tools for the Digital Age. And the idea is, gosh, organizations like the Central Intelligence Agency have a lot of frameworks that aren't taught in most business schools, but I think are increasingly relevant in a world of AI, because they're all about things like, gee, how do I make sense of a totally new situation? Gee, how do I get better at things like strategic empathy? Yes, there are frameworks for that. All the sorts of human skills that I think, no matter how rapidly AI progresses, will remain an important part of running a successful organization. So if you're interested, I don't know, we can get you the Coursera links. And
I'll just pop it. Oh, hang on. I just, sorry. I'll see whether I can. I know you sent it to me earlier, and I'll try and get posted on this. The alternative is because those people are not on the call, who's going to see the...
Sure, they can pick it up later. I mean, you can also just search Coursera Intelligence Tools for the Digital Age, or my name. I've only done one MOOC, so easy enough to find. But the key for the listener, rather than to jump right onto Coursera, is simply to know that there are tools you can master. There's a new toolbox, and maybe some of them from the intelligence community are especially relevant, but undoubtedly I'm missing things, and there will be others, and we're all going to learn this together as humans trying to be successful in a changing business world.
Well, thank you. We're done with time. I have put that little link for the Coursera into the chat room for those people who are there. I'm sorry the young person or young man or woman who asked the question, there was a question that came in about AI being employed for community impact for work. So why don't we probably answer that maybe at your session, and we'd love to have you back. If not on a webinar or a webcast like this, maybe you can have longer time with us in Asia, spending time, not just half a day of a workshop, but maybe a couple of days, so that we can really workshop some of these amazing thoughts and questions. So thank you so much for your time, Milo. Joanne, do you have anything to say? Milo, do you have anything to say as we wrap up?
Yvonne, go ahead.
I'd like to thank Yvonne and Mark and 5Echo for having us on this webcast. We look forward to having more of these webcasts as well in the future, and like what Yvonne said, to have master classes and 2-day events on Milo's expertise in AI and leadership.
Great.
I'll just also say thank you and say I hope to see anyone who's interested in Singapore July 16th or at future events. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. And I'll just pause the recording right now and see you all later. Thank you very much.